Hey guys, welcome back to Old World Wednesday. As you guys know, we do a video for the Old World every single week, and we're excited for this video, which we are going to be going back and doing a little bit more work on some terrain, because I do not feel my Old World terrain is up to scratch. And by that I mean I want it to feel a little bit more like some of the Old World tables. I do have some old flock trees. They're really cool. I prefer them for my Lord of the Rings games. So for Old World games, this is what screams to me. These are the old Citadel woods. And I, in fact, have 3 of them in cellophane still. And these kind of placed around the table, painted up really nice with all of their leaves still attached, is really, really cool. Having removable trees that pop out of place and having the movement trays can move across them and stuff like that makes a huge difference in the game. I think it's very, very cool. And I thought in today's video we would tackle one of these bad boys. I'm tempted to try and do all 3, but I think that might be too much work. Whereas one might be a really comfortable and fun project. These things always came with like a whole host of like extra bits and pieces on them, like braziers and little warning signs that you hang out of the trees. And no one ever stuck them on because they would just break and be forgotten about. Another thing that I really like is obviously all of the leaves are very flat and very boring. I'm wondering if I can flock the leaves, which I know sounds bizarre. Would it be like a combination of old school trees and new school trees all mashed together? Would that look nice or would that look awful? I don't know, but I'm tempted to try it. Maybe you guys can tell me at the end whether I've made a good decision or whether I've ruined these trees. Before I get into it though, I just want to say, as always, a huge thank you to everyone out there that supported the Mediocre Hobbies channels, whether that be the Middle Earth Monday, Old World Wednesday, or of course the standard Mediocre Hobbies channel. You guys are all awesome. I really appreciate everybody watching the videos, dropping likes, commenting when they have any questions or any suggestions, and making sure you're subscribed across those 3 channels. It makes a huge difference, so thank you guys so much. Also, if you want to help support the channel even further and push us into the next stratosphere, of course, we always need extra help over on Patreon, so please do check that out, linked down below. There's a million different reasons to be involved in that. My favorite one is that I get to give back to the community. This month we are giving back a 1,000 Suns Army box set. So if you want to be with the chance of winning this 1,000 Suns Army box set, all you have to do is be signed up to Patreon at any tier and you're automatically entered in to win. So that sounds like something that excites you. Please do check that out, linked below. Okay, without further ado, let's dive in and work on a set of old school woods. It's just so nostalgic seeing the old boxes. It makes me just happy. €23. Could you buy any piece of scenery from Games Workshop now for €23? I don't think so at all. Obviously, these are awesome pieces of scenery that can be painted a million different ways, depending on whether you're in like an alien world or whether you just want to follow one of the natural seasons. I'm going to go for, well, something I didn't think about in the intro. When I talked in the intro, I thought I was going to do them as traditional trees. Realizing that I'm working on my Cathay Army, I kind of soon pivoted away from the traditional color scheme and decided to go with like a cherry blossom. So pink leaves, nice pale bark, and like rich earthy ground with like nice flock. And I think this is going to be a good idea. I do definitely want a Cathay board. So the idea of getting, 3 or 4 sets of these all done up like this, and then, some of those like Chinese tiered towers and scenery pieces. Maybe some bamboo scenery as well would be really cool. If I can get my hands on all of that and then play some games with my Cathay, I think I'd be a pretty happy camper. So let's work towards that with this. Obviously, these kits are old, i.e. they're from 2007, so they're nearly 20 years old, which is crazy. I remember the day these came out, which is a sad, sad realization. But yeah, it's still a great kit. It still holds up today. I know Games Workshop has replaced it with a new wood now, with more kind of Age of Sigmar needs in mind. And it's a lovely set, but I prefer this one, to be honest. Obviously, it is kind of a pain, like collapsing down such a natural structure like a tree into a flat packed box is obviously an engineering feat. I would not like to be the people who have to try and design this, and trying to make sure that the tree doesn't look kind of two-dimensional when you're constructing them is something you really have to take into account. You have to think about it, really try and flesh out all those extra branches and put them in and kind of stretch the tree out as much as possible. Obviously, it's got big gaps and old mold lines and stuff that need some attention. But when you get the basic trees together, they look something like this. I'm liking how they're looking. I got them all sprayed a matte black, and then it was time to move on to painting. This is the piece where I think the new trees fall down, because they just have a ring and then blank in the middle so that you can, see the actual gaming board or whatever. This has a fully detailed scenic base, and it is absolutely beautiful. So I went in and I airbrushed up the rocks first, just a nice dark kind of grey brown color, and then I went in with a lighter grey over the top of it for a bit of a highlight. Then I very carefully went in with like a Catachan flesh, nice rich earthy brown color, and I airbrushed this across all of the ground, trying my best not to cover the stones too much, but of course you're going to hit the stones while you're airbrushing, but that's okay. If you are walking through the forest and you see stones on the ground, they're not clean, they're very dirty, and they're covered in muck and mud and moss and grime, so it's totally okay to hit them with that. This is where I went in and started attacking the trees. I went for Morghast Bone, which is a really nice starting point for this. And then we did some Zandri Dust, and then went up into like a Ushapti Bone or something like that to make it really kind of pale and pallid, and gave me the kind of tree aesthetic I was looking for. I did end up overspraying most of the base because the roots go all the way down to the bottom with these. And you have to flip the trees around so many times to try and get all the nooks and crannies for that first coat. So I ended up going back a little bit later and correcting the ground, going back in with some brown and re-graying the rocks around the roots. I decided it's easier to just make sure that the wood is the right color, and then I'll just hand paint those other bits later on. Here I am going in with that final highlight. You can see the trees really starting to brighten up. Look really cool. Obviously I'm doing this from like a 45-degree angle from the top straight down, so it only kind of highlights the kind of brighter areas facing like upwards and leaving the underneath nice and dark. When that Catachan flesh was dried, I went in with my traditional dry brushes that I do for all the bases for my old world models, which is a Ryza Rust dry brush. And I went for a nice kind of heavy-ish coat of this. You can see, I often talk about this, that like the kind of richness to soil that has that kind of orange tone in it. It really does work. A lot of people think too, it's kind of a madness that I go in with Ryza Rust for my bases. But once you get a nice coat, you can see it doesn't really register as like bright orange. It just looks like nice rich soil. And when you go in with that bone color afterwards, for a light dry brush over the top, it really does tone it all down, blend it down, and you get this absolutely stunning earth color. At least I think it's stunning. I think it looks great. And you can see how fantastic the base is on this piece right here. It's just stands up so well after 20 years. I used some of the, what is the crazy moss texture paste from, I can't even remember where it's from. The Dirty Down, that's the company, isn't it? Yeah, Dirty Down Moss. Which you have to say, shake the bejeebas out of, open it up and make sure you stir the bottom so it all separates and mix together properly and you can actually use it. After this dry, it does turn very mossy looking and looks really cool. So I went in around the rocks, around the roots of the trees. I did hit the trees a little bit. There was nothing wrong with a bit of moss growing up the side of trees. But mostly groundwork and kind of the rock work was hit with that, once again, to help it blend in. There is a couple of other details that I need to paint on these trees that I didn't do in this video at all. There's some nice ropes going around the branches, and there's a few extra details hanging off of the trees that I glued on. I'm just not sure quite where I want to take those right now. I'm tempted to make this like official Cathay scenery. So should those ropes be like bright red or something? I don't know yet. So I'll have to have a little bit of a think about that and go in. Here is where we come into the cherry blossom. As you see, I've resorted back to the airbrush for the first coat. As you can see, the old trick for painting up these things is you don't take the leaves off the branches, off the sprues, sorry, for the painting. It just makes it so much easier to do. I airbrushed up the first coat and then I dry brushed up the other two coats. This is the Two Thin Coats range of paints that I used for this. So the Pershing pink, the hot pink, and then the neo pink. And it gave me a really nice result, exactly what I wanted for the kind of nice cherry blossom kind of color scheme. And obviously there's loads of protruding branches and stuff coming through some of the kind of canopy of these guys. So we did have to go back in with that Morghast bone and a little bit of like Ushapti bone and actually hand paint in all those branches to make sure they matched. Back in the day when you were batch building and painting these things up for like gaming tables for the store, these are the kind of details that you would have just left pink and pretended they didn't exist.
Seems like you can't really get these sets anymore, and these sets are for my personal collection that I want to keep well and, you know, treat them right for evermore. I think putting in a maximum effort in getting really nice trees, it's important to do all those extra details, and I think it pays off at the end. You then cut out all of the leaves, and then I went for the mid-tone again. So I went back to the hot pink, and I just painted over all the bits where, you know, the sprue was connecting to the trees just to tidy it off. I then started placing the canopies in the correct places on the trees, going in from underneath with some super glue and applying quite a lot of it so I get really strong connection points. I try my best to have like canopies going across multiple branches so that they all kind of blend in and have much kind of better connection points. It worked. They're all stuck on. They seem to be stuck on quite well. As goes the aesthetics, I think it looks really good. The real pallid wood with all the bright pink with some of the mossy earth tones, the bright stonework painted up. Individually, I think they look great. And as a set of trees, I think they just are going to jump off the tabletop. Give you that slightly kind of fantasy element to the Cathay and Army and the kind of Warhammer the Old World in general. I did add one extra step after this to help it once again blend into the grass mats or kind of the gaming mats that I use, and that is going in with some kind of Geek Gaming Scenics EVA glue stuff, dotting it around the base, using a brush to spread that around a little bit make it look like a bit more natural than just blobs poured on. And then I added copious amounts of flock to those, made sure I hold those down, secured them, and I ended up with a really nice kind of green base.
Okay, that video took many twists and turns. Obviously, you saw that I pivoted in the video, decided to do a cherry blossom to match in with my Cathay Army, and both the other sets that I have will eventually end up like this as well. Hopefully not too kind of far in the distant future. In the next couple of weeks, I would love to get these guys done and really have the kind of a table's worth of scenery set aside for my Cathay. So I'm gonna have to find some awesome scenery for them. Some of those Chinese style temple buildings and courtyard and stuff, and get some STLs of those and get them printed and get them painted up to match as well. And I think that as a whole set on a table is gonna look fantastic. Hopefully you guys enjoyed a look at an old enough kit of trees, the first plastic set of trees Games Workshop ever did. I'm really happy with the result. Hopefully you enjoyed this little video. And yeah, thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one.